Normally I start by taking attendance. Jeff is not here yet. Maeve, you're here. Jack, you're here. Brian, you're here. No Paul. Mark is on his way. Jennifer. Joe, I know Joe is, he has a root canal or something like this. And Sandy?
Mm-hmm.
All right, so we have 4, which is one short of a quorum, but the other 2 should be here shortly. So feel free to proceed.
Okay. So, hello everyone. I will be acting chair until Jeff gets here. So I guess kind of looking at our agenda, starting with was the public communications.
Correct. We only have 1 public communication. There was a musical artist, and I can pull their name up afterwards if you'd like. Musical artist who I believe specializes in like historically themed songs. I think particularly pertaining to the Revolution, reached out. So I made sure that they were going to be on our list, but other than that, no other public communications.
Wonderful. Yeah, that was something we hadn't talked about yet. We talked about visual arts, we talked about obviously reenactors, but we hadn't talked about music yet. So that's a really good resource. Reports from the subcommittees. I think that Brian and I subcommittee is the only one that has met so far. I don't know if Budget did. I apologize for not getting the minutes out for it. There's a project at the city that has been very time consuming, so I haven't been at my desk much, but what we were tasked with was starting to find those assets and talent and folks in the community when it comes to a lot of libraries. Like we're connected with the Upper Hudson Library. I'm not saying the acronym right, but you know but they are very engaged and like we want speakers, but how do we get them? So we're reaching out to our communities and we've broken it up by region. So you gave us a report, Brian, about Colony. Some of the folks there. I don't know if you want to share with everybody a little bit.
Yeah, I think part of, as Maeve said, we had a discussion about kind of the who and what and where in terms of compiling resources and figuring out, the folks that we knew and the places that we knew and where were some areas that we needed to fill in. And so I think we broke down geographically amongst kind of different towns or areas in the county to try to put together a list of relevant historical sites or era-related sites so that we have a list there. Fortunately, in Colony at least, they made it a little bit easy because the Historical Society has a good document on that. So I pulled a couple relevant spots, I think Schuyler Flats and the Knox Trail, and then sent a note to the town historian to ask if there was anything, basically not represented on the list that he thought worthwhile to be included. I hadn't heard back yet, but like I said, so Colony made it easy on me for that part.
So we'll have those resources. But that was in our discussion. We realized, okay, we're looking for the talent, we're looking for it, but we really need that database of what is actually available. So I think now we took that step back and we were digging into that. So we should have a list of sites and people. We kept saying, that these would be libraries, but then when I went to and Jeff was there as well, the NYSTIA, the New York State Tourism Association, did a 250 summit, and they talked about other destinations doing tavern talks, which Albany has done tavern talks. The New York State Museum has also done tavern talks. They are wildly successful, and they break it up by different regions around there. So I was like, oh, well, at least from Discover Albany and the museum's point, we know that this is successful. So even thinking about as we get these folks, bringing it to the local economy, local businesses as well, to diversify our outreach, getting some of these stories out.
I also like Maeve, from yesterday, I think it was Saratoga County talked about they had events in the summertime in public parks.
Yeah. Yep.
That looked tremendous. That I thought that would be. There's certainly some places that we could replicate that idea.
Yeah, and tying into those Path Through History, I Love New York, which it's October. They usually do it on Indigenous Peoples Columbus Day weekend, and then the other one is Father's Day weekend, and they've been doing that for years and years and years. So that's something that people now, history lovers, already know that's a thing. Like, oh, I want to do something. So these are events that we can that we could kind of tie into. So we'll kind of get into that in some of the new business as well. But Jeff, now you're here.
Continue, please.
But that's it. I think we're the only subcommittee that met. Is there? What do we have? The budget
I think you
subcommittee
want
as
to
well.
speak about that.
Yeah, budget
Okay.
budget is yet to meet, but we need to meet in the next week to 10 days.
Okay.
Because we really want, I think we want to, we talked at the last meeting about making a request to the county for sort of continuing at least year by year, but, and we're in the budget cycle presently.
I wasn't put on a committee because that was when I had COVID and you were happy not to see me there. So would you want to put me on the budget?
That would be awesome.
Yeah.
That would be awesome. So I will, we'll follow up in the next day to schedule, it may be virtual if it's easier for people, but a discussion of the budget committee. And what I'd like to do is, if we could, whatever consensus we reach from that meeting, send out, what I'm thinking is a form of a communication to the county executive and the legislature saying the request with a brief outline of, what we've done thus far and what we plan to do over at least the next year. What I'd like to do is then send it to the larger commission and get sort of sign off on that communication so that we can send it ahead of our next commission meeting. I don't want to miss a whole cycle by waiting till we meet again. So please be looking for that in your emails.
How does the commission get their hands on the initial startup money of the $15,000?
So I've been doing a good amount of digging on this. So basically, the way it was originally set up was that in the resolution that appointed him as county historian, it also set up the $15,000 for the purposes of the 250th commemoration at his recommendation. I've been talking to the county controller's office. They seem to think that, I guess for some reason it wasn't printed in the budget, so people hadn't heard of it, but now everyone's aware of it, and I'm going to be working with him, and I guess evidently I have sign off, which I'm not sure is 100% correct, but now that that's in place, we're going to be able to start, expending that money. It's important, to your point, it's important that the legislature and the executive continue to allocate that, because this money was 2023 money, which we can spend, but only through the rest of this year. So, what you're talking about is very important for the continued operations.
And as the budget committee meets, we need an account, things like that set up at some point, so have to make it real.
Mm-hmm.
No, the county, it's
The county's fund already exists. So,
But what about additional funds that we're going to be raising as we move forward?
so the resolution that established the commission sort of envisioned that there be sort of a memorandum of understanding between the chair and Discover Albany for the reception of donations.
Oh, and it would go into our education foundation?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay, good.
Correct. So that's something I think we'll have to work on, but
Yeah.
it's already sort of envisioned.
Are you anticipating a certain dollar amount that you'll be requesting?
I was gonna throw, again, for the discussion of the budget committee, I was gonna throw out 30,000 for the calendar year.
Mhm.
Again, characterizing it as largely seed, or, what's the venture capital term after seeds? I should remember.
Seed.
Seed, well, then, an astute legislator would say, no, your 15,000 was the seed, we're on the next stage. But still,
Germination.
What's that?
Germination.
No, that's not it. But it's very descriptive. But, that's kind of the figure I was batting about. And I think, as this is the budget process is a very fluid process. So I would urge each of us who is here by virtue of an appointee from a political actor, the county executive, the majority leader, to perhaps begin sensitizing your appointing patrons as to this is coming, and we'd really appreciate their consideration. particularly important with, and Brian, I want to talk with you before, but, you know, I think I really like the sort of, I was going to say bipartisan, but this is nonpartisan nature of this commission. You know, the budget process is not necessarily that, you know, and so we do need, I think, to sort of bulk up our sort of presence and identification, particularly with the majority, because that's where the money comes from. So yeah, so those of you who, and I was looking at the list, it escapes me who the members were of the budget committee. Please be looking for a communication in the coming days for a meeting in the next week to 10 days.
The big thing for next week is the Lafayette. So that's for the Masons have something on Monday night, and then the whole day is on Tuesday.
Do we want to hear a discussion of
Oh, sure.
Sandy?
Sure.
Yeah, that's it's a new business.
Am I jump? Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
we're jumping ahead.
Okay, that's, sorry. Go ahead, Mary.
For the budget, for discussion on things to spend on, and then it could probably, that'll roll into new business, but getting some of that collateral for tabling, so tablecloths and that kind of stuff, I think we would wanna spend that sooner rather than later within this year, so, that's something, you know, we can roll Katie in, yeah, the stickers, that kind of stuff,
What do
so.
you mean tablecloths?
So, well, so when we go out to public spaces and we wanna have a nice professional looking table,
Okay.
we would want our
Yeah.
branding on the
Yeah.
table, so that kind of stuff. I can always ask Katie to start before that meeting, some of those,
I think
wish
that would,
list items.
I think that would be a good idea.
Okay, so we just made one for Discover Albany, so like a tent and that kind of stuff. So if we need to spend money sooner rather than later, I think we want.
Yeah, I
to
mean, we
put
can
forward some.
procure a lot of that stuff through the county.
Mhm.
I don't wanna sound financially responsible, but I think it's probably better that we spend the money than it not be spent.
Right.
So,
Use it or lose it.
that's
Right, okay, we'll get a wish list to you guys.
And on that topic again, and I'm sorry, you're gonna hear this ad nauseum today, but yesterday there were so many great ideas that were shared. But again, I think it was Saratoga County that they procured it looked like a campaign tent, almost looked like a Revolutionary War tent, that they've now deployed, I think quite
Yeah, but it
effective.
was in the same breath of like, you don't have to spend a lot of money, and I looked at that tent and went, ooh.
Yeah.
But it was beautiful. It's gorgeous.
Yeah.
The historian's office there is absolutely unreal. It's staffed, it's a full-time. and
It
there-
shows.
And there are a number of grants that come from the Dakes family and comes from the Solomon Foundation. And they've been in business for a long time, and they're totally tied in with tourism. Now, I was in Saratoga yesterday, but not for that, because we had a meeting, quarterly meeting for state parks, which clashed with it, but I was sorry not to have been there to be able to do both.
Alright, so that's our subcommittees. Old business. Is there any old business we need to look back on?
Did you want to fill in the group on your conversation with Aaron? Aaron Mayer?
Yeah, I was gonna wait until new business, but as we don't have any old business, it feels like it's been months since we last met, so I don't
Okay.
even remember what we discussed last time. I did have a conversation with Aaron Mayer, who has done almost a decade's worth of work as it pertains to recognizing the Battle of Normanstow, vis-a-vis memorials and setting aside the land from a historical standpoint. And we had quite a long, interesting conversation. Jack, I think you had talked to him just prior to when I reached out to him, which was about a month ago.
Yeah.
And bottom line is, we're all on the same page in terms of what we want to see happen there. He was a little concerned, I think, with he knew who we were, but he was a little concerned about us kind of, I don't want to use the term stepping on his toes, but he's done a lot of due diligence in terms of dealing with the bureaucracy, cutting through some red tape, getting to this point, and it's literally taken him about a decade. And he didn't want to see anybody come in and undercut anything he already did. And I assured him that we were simply
Sounds so
doing-
unusual for a local historian.
Yeah. So I assured him that we were simply an additional arm, an additional resource for him as we move forward. He's very passionate, very knowledgeable,
Yeah.
particularly of the Battle of Saratoga, coming from two standpoints generally that we've talked about. The Rhode Island Regiment, which was primarily made up of African American, and the historical significance of the battle as it pertains to the fact that Burgoyne was sending down his rabble-rousers to begin to coax the loyalists, to frighten the colonists, and to get the fence setters to, and when it came back to Burgoyne that this little skirmish was quashed, it kind of set in motion for, the Battle of Saratoga, and Burgoyne kind of let this go. So it has a very important, significant historical significance in terms of the fact that we just look at it as this little skirmish that took place amongst, 50 or some odd soldiers with a small sign on the side of Route 146 in Guilderland. So I think we all want to make people aware of the significance, and particularly the town of Guilderland's role, and the fact that a battle of the American Revolution took place in our town. And it was a significant battle, as small as it was. I took it upon myself, on behalf of the commission, to invite Aaron to speak at one of our next two meetings. I think we're going to try to do a meeting at Normanvale in Guilderland. I thought that would be appropriate.
Yeah.
So I think we had tentatively scheduled that for our November meeting, but again, that's up in the air.
Van
So
Skyke is the next one.
Van Skyke is the next one?
Yeah.
Normanville,
Yeah.
okay. So again, he was absolutely looking forward to attending one of our meetings and speaking to us, and he can certainly give us much more information in terms of where he's at and what his ideas and vision is as we move forward.
Love that.
But, I mean, I'm getting ahead of myself, because I would love to, Jack and I had this discussion when we were at the Van Skyke Mansion. I would love to see a picture on 146, and I rode by it yesterday, a turnoff with a memorial where people could come and park their cars, look
Yeah.
over the battlefield, a nice colorful description of what took place. There is one issue. Part of matter of fact, where the barn stood, where the actual skirmish took place, is privately owned. And I think Aaron is very, very intelligently trying to be very careful, because he recognizes, as he's trying to procure this area, that the owner is also possibly recognizing that the value of her little piece of that is going up. So he's trying to do this very kind of under the radar and smartly.
Well, the irony is that privately owned parcel is essentially an island, otherwise surrounded by public parking for both the town of Guilderland and the city of Watervliet and the reservoir. The town has been, trying for years to sort of complete the chain of that, but to date have not been successful. So,
Jack, do you have anything to add? Because I know he mentioned that he had talked to you.
Your diplomatic description of Aaron is very appropriate. And I've been dealing with Aaron for many, many years. And he's an excellent historian. And it's important to remember that he's initiated this now for a decade and deserves the recognition through all of it.
We're not trying to take anything away from him.
Yeah.
We're simply an additional resource that would like to
Yeah.
see this come to reality.
Yeah, it's and we're lucky. Somebody's already there and is already preparing for it and knows a lot of background on it, so.
who's married to a journalist who has the
Yeah.
ability to kind of
That's right.
get the word out.
Yeah.
That's right.
I think there's another angle on the actual battle itself. As I recall, one of the objectives of the Tories, specific objectives of the Tories in organizing that day, was to attempt to disrupt the planned delivery of the agricultural foodstuffs from western Guilderland and the Schoharie Valley to the hugely massing American militia and army up at Saratoga. The fact of the matter was that they were unsuccessful in that food was delivered and was a major part in
Yeah.
sustaining the siege that ultimately broke Burgoyne's back, so to speak. So, in addition to, well, what if? if that hadn't been broken up and the Tories were successful, that would have significantly interrupted the delivery of a major portion of the supplies needed for the American Army.
In the category of not appreciating what went on in this period, there's a movement to get rid of the current flag of the city of Albany, which includes the coat of arms of the city, the one from 1797. And I wonder how many people, they all understand a beaver, but I don't think they understand the two sheaves of wheat. And that wheat was just critical for the then greater Albany County, coming from Schoharie and a little bit west, but primarily Schoharie and here in our current county. And that wheat was so important. And you'll notice that there's a Native American on one side, but the person next to him is not a merchant, as was suggested by the same people who did the stylized statue of it across from Union Station, because he's holding a scythe for harvesting his wheat. And people forget that whole part. And one of the reasons we're very critical is not the accident of which mountains come together and where the river is and so on and so forth. The food, an army marches on its stomach.
That's right.
And that was a very, very important thing. It's not that important that it's on the coat of arms of the city of Albany.
In that particular little neighborhood, right about where, if you're familiar where Towasenta Park is in Guilderland.
Across the street, right?
That's right.
Pretty much, yeah.
And right before you get to the state historical marker that indicates the Battle of the Normanskill, the one before that, it indicates the farm of Evert Banker, who was a mayor of Albany, I think the third mayor of Albany. And he set his farm up there back in the 1600s. And then he was actually, I think the significance for that location, not so much that he was the mayor of Albany, but he was also the commissioner of Indian Affairs for the province of New York. And why his farm was there is because that is where the Normanskill was the way that the Native Americans primarily brought their merchandise to originally Fort Orange and then later Albany. So that little area right there, and where the Normanskill comes down, that was very significant, and that's why he headquartered himself there. And then, of course, it was also what is today 146 was the Schoharie Road. So just in that little area where you can actually see the creek, kind of like when you go through the Mohawk Valley and you can see the railroad, the river, the thruway, and it really makes the impression that, okay, this was a very important corridor, right? In an earlier age, that little section of State Route 146 and the Normanskill was where those two primary means were almost a bottleneck. So if you could control that, you could basically cut off anything that was coming from the west.
That's where the traffic would be coming.
And that's, no doubt, that's why the Tories,
Yeah. Rachel lives on Banker Street, named after him.
Okay.
What is he, number 2? Number 2 mayor?
I think Jeff Brady's
Yeah.
3, but he's early.
I mean, bottom line, we have a very significant historical event, literally in the heart of our county,
Yeah.
that is underappreciated and in some respects misunderstood. And we just want to help bring it to life.
And going back, and it was hikeable space, right? Like it was someplace recreation-wise that somebody,
The battlefield itself? Or?
well, where Aaron's kind of looking, is it something that me as a visitor,
It could be made into that.
yeah. Because I will say, and we can get that new with business, and it was something that was definitely, what I remember from our last meeting, we were very interested in that sort of like those outdoor opportunities.
I'd say right now it's just an open field that
Interesting.
leads down.
How much land would you like to see around this site? It was near the barn, right?
yeah, the barn's no
is-
longer there.
The barn is not there.
I want to say
5
like,
or 6 acres.
oh no, there's more than that.
Is there?
Yeah, in the 30 or 40, I think.
Okay.
I think the family is Drabetko. It's the Drabetko farm. But it's sizable. And like I said, it connects, it is the piece that separates expanded Towasenta Park from the Waterville Reservoir. So it's aside from its historical significance, it's a very important recreational and
When was the barn raised? Because I can remember the.
I can remember too.
Barn.
Probably in the 80s.
Okay.
The house was still there.
Yeah, that's too bad.
The house was still there. And, well, we're all sort of amateur historians, so at the expense of boring everybody, a friend of mine was at a
Are you
antique
gonna talk
show.
about your seventh
No,
grade
no,
grandfather?
was at an antique show in New Hampshire and mentioned, it's the same fellow that bought Normanville, mentioned that he had this historic house in the Normanville Valley, and one of the antiques dealers said, for the Normanville Valley, my 4 great-grandfather was the only fatality of the Battle of the Normanville. And this is a woman who lives in New Hampshire.
Really?
Yep.
Wow.
So so he gets her on the phone last week,
Wow.
and I said, well, I thought it was 7, but it turns out to be 5. I said, my 5 great-grandfather was killed in the Battle of the Normanville. And we're like, well, wait a minute.
I see a pattern here.
Yeah, but there was only one, they were brothers. And
Oh, wow.
the record needs to be corrected because, and I figured it out, but I won't bore you with it, but the way it was characterized was that one person was killed. In fact, 2 people were killed, and they were brothers.
They were brothers.
Yeah, and I am a descendant of the younger brother, Benjamin, and this woman was a descendant of the older brother, David, who was
What's
sort
her
of
last
the
name?
ringleader, Springer.
Springer.
Yep. But so, just kind of weird
That's cool.
coincidence that he happened to be at an antique show in New Hampshire, and this woman says, so. And one last point, I think related, unbeknownst to me at the conference yesterday, they said that Ken Burns is actually working on one of his specials on the Revolution. And it struck me that, one of the most compelling parts of his World War II documentary was the focus on the home front,
Yeah.
right? It was almost as prevalent as the focus on the actual, battlefront, which I think made it so interesting. And then I got thinking about it, like, the home front is not a concept we generally apply to the Revolution. Right? We tend to, and if Paul was here, we tend to focus on the battles, right? And as I was sitting there yesterday thinking, okay, well, Saratoga's got so much to work with, so much to talk about, and Westchester has got all this stuff, and I'm like, for Little Albany, we have the, if the name of the game is, your battles and your conflicts, whatever, we're pretty pale by comparison. But understanding the notion of the home front and how important that is in any conflict, and understanding the context of the Battle of the Normanville, and providing the foodstuffs and the support and all the things that, the provisioning and the organization of everything that happened in Saratoga was actually done in Cohoes and in Albany. That is really our sort of claim to relevance in this whole thing.
On Wednesday, I'll be going again to Saratoga, and it's that meeting for the Knox Trek. And the interesting thing about that, there are only 2 military people involved in it, and that's Knox and I think his brother. And that all of the Teamsters, a lot of them recruited by Schuyler, are our local Teamsters. They were not in the Army. They might have joined later on, but they are civilians who are working as Teamsters, taking those 57 or so cannons that eventually will go down, drive the British out. So, I mean, that's the home front.
Yeah. Jeff, my ears poked up too, because again, I would like to reach out to him, because as you said, if the battles weren't planned at the mansion, it never would have happened. If that little skirmish at Normanville didn't happen, we should be promoting that
Yeah.
for Albany
Yeah.
County. We have a lot of richness that people don't know
Yeah.
the stories.
And what makes the home front, of course, it was fluid and it was not secure, right? Unlike the home front in World War II, in which we were all in this together, right? It was you were constantly looking over your shoulder, but it was. So I think that there's a theme there that we can.
Yeah,
that we can really.
I mean, we talked about this a little bit in our subcommittee meeting, kind of all of these stories, and not just Normanville as an event, but the why and how it was there, kind of, with foodstuffs coming in from the west, and that being kind of that perfect corridor, that feeds right into our crossroads theme.
Yep.
That, there's Saratoga, there's this, that, as significant, historical events. But this area is a big piece, a critical piece of why those things are in those areas.
Yeah.
And, whether the trail, Normanville, all this kind of comes through this area to end up either at other places here or at, more quote-unquote notable areas elsewhere, but all kind of crossing through this Albany County
Also,
area.
our status as a refugee center.
Yeah.
But also, I think Len Tantillo has a painting of that enormous hospital that was built. It would be in front of St. Mary's, for example, where the county courthouse is and so on. And a lot of people get wounded and a lot of people get sick. And you send them out of the way, which means get down back to Albany. That's a very important center too.
Well, with your support, and I don't know where, I imagine if it's scheduled to air next year, I imagine its production is probably very well along, but, you know.
Yeah, I guess I was gonna talk about Ken Burns, actually. So Ken Burns is, people have reached out, and they're very interested in doing a screening in the fall of '25 in either Albany or Saratoga or both.
Awesome.
We had some initial conversations about that. It's his, I guess his production company people, and they were actually at the Colonial Williamsburg event this past March, the convening of all the states, and they gave a little preview of it, so I was able to talk to them in person. And you know, I'm suggesting to them, you know, I think Saratoga obviously is great, and they shot a lot of it up in Saratoga, or at least the Saratoga part of it. But I would like to do something in Albany too, and they seem very interested in doing that, kind of a double, not that we want to compete with each other, but you know, having something here at the museum or somewhere else in Albany. They're looking for space for several hundred people though. It's kind of it's not open to the public, but it's, you know, invitation only, but they like a big crowd type of thing. So I will certainly keep you involved, and I can put you in touch with the people I've been speaking to if you're interested in that.
That would be great. Does anyone know, oftentimes, you know, the local stations do sort of tag on productions. Does anyone know whether WMHT has a?
I can give you an update.
Oh,
I don't know specifically about WMHT, although I think they're one of the ones, well, I know they're one of the ones that's thinking, but National PBS is, you know, putting a lot of effort into the Ken Burns piece. So what they're doing is, I think, and I'm not the full expert, but we do have the person that oversees public media in this building for the state. As part of our Office of Cultural Ed, and she was telling me that national PBS and NPR actually are looking to piggyback on the Ken Burns with local programming. So that would mean that they're giving some resources. It's unclear what that means, but they're looking to distribute some resources to public television stations in the areas that are highlighted in the film. So this area would be a big one, obviously. Okay. And so she is actually, her name's Jacqueline Stapleton. She's actually giving a presentation at the State 250th Commission meeting in October. And she'll be giving us an update on exactly what's happening. And so National PBS was at the convening in Williamsburg as well. They co-hosted the section with Ken Burns and everything. So it's a big initiative. Sure. So I suspect that because of their kind of targeted approach, I don't think they're necessarily giving it to every PBS station in the country, but the ones that are focusing on certain aspects in certain localities, and there's a big portion about this area with Saratoga, but also Fort Ticonderoga, 1775. You mentioned the Hudson Valley. I know they were filming in the Hudson Valley, they were filming in New York City, Long Island. So New York's got a huge, I mean, we all know this, but New York's got a huge role in the Ken Burns film too. So I'll keep everybody in.
On TV yesterday, they had an advertisement for Ken Burns, and it said October, and it was American Revolution, so I don't know what that is.
It could be, yeah, interesting.
Could be October 2025. They do.
Yeah,
They do promote that.
what I was told is that they're doing it in the fall of 25.
Yeah.
So that could make sense.
But this was very clearly this October something or other on the American. So it may-
Interesting. It could be a kind of a teaser type.
Could be,
yeah, an interview with him or.
Yep.
Well, with the group's permission, I would recommend that we reach out perhaps to WMHT and with our, sharing our themes of sort of crossroads, destination, Albany,
Yeah.
home front, and see whether there's anything there that they're, if we could provide, organize and curate some content for them, whether they have the interest or the means to, or maybe they're already working on something, but we'd want to make sure that our angles are given, due consideration.
I think the Rhode Island Regiment, the Battle of the Normanskill,
Yeah.
would be something they'd be interested in,
Yeah.
because the last thing they want to do is have an all-white male
Absolutely.
history book produced.
Absolutely. Great.
All right, so on to new business, so Devin, we've been bringing you in, but do you mind
Yes.
introducing yourself?
Sure.
and-
So I thought you were introduced.
No, I'm sorry, that was fine.
All right, thank you for having me. My name's Devin Lander. I'm the state historian here at the State Museum. Welcome. Sorry for the parking issue. I'm sorry for the snafu with the tour. There's a lot going on today that I wasn't necessarily aware of, so I apologize for that. But so one of the things I do as state historian, as you probably know, is I am a member of the state's commission, the 250th commission, and I'm also kind of the staff facilitator for it as well. So I wear more than one hat. The co-chairs of the state's commission are the Commissioner of State Ed Department, which oversees the Office of Cultural Ed here, and the Commissioner of State Parks. So it has two chairs, so there's two lead agencies. There are several other agencies named on the commission, including Empire State Development, the I Love New York program, OGS, the Secretary of State, and then there are appointed members. So the governor has 4 appointments, the majority leader and president of the Senate has 2, Assembly Speaker has 2, and then minority in each house has 1. So the commission has been formed finally. It took a while, it took about 2 years from the legislation passing to actually get the appointments made. But we had our first meeting here in May 15th of this year. The next meeting is scheduled for October 23rd at 10 a.m. Ganondigan State Historic Site, which is in Victor, New York. It will be streamed, it's a public meeting, so I encourage, if you can't attend in person, to certainly stream in. We're finalizing the agenda for that, but one of the things, I gave you a teaser, is our public media person is going to be discussing the initiative behind Ken Burns, how that's going to play out at the state level and with local stations. We're also, the legislation that created the state commission, first item that we have to do is create a strategic plan. So we're working on that now. Draft strategic plan is being formulated, and then it's being shared among the commissioners now. There's a lot of emails going back and forth, a lot of suggestions. So our hope is that October 23rd we will be able to finalize the draft, because we really need to get it in the hands of the governor and the legislative leaders. That's our directive. Again, it's supposed to be done 2 years ago, but here we are. So we're moving forward with that. The strategic plan, and I brought guides in case everyone doesn't already have this. If you do have it, feel free to leave it here and I'll use it elsewhere. But one of the things that we did, my office did a couple years ago, is partner with the Association of Public Historians, which is, we know them as AFNIs. So the AFNIs is the membership group that is made up of our local historians. Hopefully Assemblyman McEnany is a member, but our county historians, village historians, town historians, their membership group is AFNIs. And one of the things that we've been discussing over the last few years here is obviously planning for the 250th. And they had a lot of questions, and I was receiving a lot of questions. So we created a working group partnering with AFNIs to put together some strategic themes, and I think some of the themes of the home front that you were just speaking about really fit into this very well. So what we did was take the American Association of State and Local Histories themes and guidebook and kind of tweak them for New York. So we created 6 themes. I believe they only had 5, so we threw another one in. But basically this gives an idea and some suggestions. Again, like people and organizations don't have to follow this, but it's some suggestions as to how we can be looking at the interpretive themes, programmatic themes, ideas for outreach and things like that. And again, with the focus and on the American Revolution, the events around the American Revolution, including those that preceded it, and I would argue that Albany plays an immense role throughout all of this history, all of this colonial history. Obviously, it was the target, right, for both Burgoyne and coming up from New York City and
Destination
all that.
Albany.
Yeah, so there's a lot of opportunity for that. And one of the themes, one theme obviously is Indigenous history. That's something that, again, thinking about our directive as a state commission is to think about the entire state, including parts of the state that had no battles, had no real, there was very little settlement as far as European settlement. Of course, there's indigenous people everywhere. So one of the things we came up with is indigenous history, because that's one thing that every area of the state has a history that they can talk about. And then, thinking about what role indigenous people played in the American Revolution, they were the other empire, right? It was a struggle of empires, and the Haudenosaunee were an empire. They were a major force, obviously, in New York. So that's a New York story that we have. Other parts of the Northeast at that period don't really have that same story. And then choosing your side, and this comes back to that kind of home front idea of why would a person or a family choose to be a rebel versus remaining loyal to the king, and these are very personal decisions. They're decisions based on economy. They're decisions based on loyalty. But New York, having such a large loyalist contingent throughout the American Revolution, really is again a story that is in many ways a very New York story. So that's the theme of interpreting and digging down into these local stories about why certain people would remain loyal and others would not. And then what did that mean? And what was the challenges that would have been faced on either side? And in many ways, and I'm preaching to the choir here, so I won't do too much of a history lesson, but in many ways, in New York, this was a civil war, right? Especially on the western boundaries, and even around here. And you noted, what was it like to be looking over your shoulder, because you didn't necessarily know if your neighbor was going to suddenly attack, let alone, the British. So that's a story that is, I won't say unique to New York, but is a very strong story in New York. Power of Place is more about, you mentioned the Normanskill and why is Albany such a strategic point, not only for the American Revolution, but the War of 1812. And so, it's really thinking about giving communities and commissions the idea of thinking about, why certain events happened in their exact location, and then how political boundaries have changed. We have had different counties. Saratoga was once part of Albany County. Vermont was once part of New York. All of these kind of swirling stories about exactly what happened in different places and why certain events played out the way they do. It wasn't by chance that they were targeting Albany. They were targeting Albany for a reason, strategic reason, very strategic reason. And that can be extrapolated to other parts of the state. The Niagara frontier, why was that so important? So there's many opportunities with that as well. And then We the People, that talks more about the creation of the Declaration, the Constitution. How has that changed over time? What were the why has definitions of citizenship changed? Why were certain decisions made about enslavement, for example? Why was that kept in the Constitution? And then how has that changed over time? A lot of the directive that we're giving in the state legislation is to certainly highlight, promote, and protect Revolutionary era resources, but it's also to talk about the 250 years that's happened since and how things have changed and New York's role in these other revolutions that are directly tied to the American Revolution for various reasons. So there's a lot of opportunity there, and that again is a way to engage with every part of the state. The parts of the state that don't necessarily have the revolutionary resource or the battle or the history like that, they may have histories related to these other revolutions. For example, the suffrage movement, which began in New York, and in many ways, in obvious ways, was directly tied to the Declaration of Independence. The Declaration of Sentiments used the same language, and they did that for a reason. Mostly because women were not allowed to vote in the original Constitution. So, and that ties us into unfinished revolutions. Again, these ongoing discussions and changes. The thing that really made the American Revolution, one of the things that made the American Revolution so important, and the Constitution certainly so groundbreaking of its time, was its ability to be changed, right? To be amended. To have, it wasn't set in stone and then that's the way it is forever, and then these struggles to realize the ideals that are set out in the Declaration and the Constitution of liberty, equality, how has that changed over time, and then the role of New York in that, and we talked about the suffrage movement, but we also have so many Underground Railroad sites. We have, and Kerry Warner made a great point yesterday about the Underground Railroad byway that they're trying to create, about it not extending north of Albany.
Yeah.
I mean, there's an entire community of Underground Railroad sites, the North Star group that interprets those. So I think there's an opportunity to draw that line a little bit farther north, hopefully. So
That was a funny one.
so yeah. So, and on the last theme that we put together is changing interpretations of the revolution, and this was the one that we kind of thought was an opportunity for historians and people working in museums, historic sites, academic historians, teachers, to talk about how do we know these things we know, right? These aren't just opinions, right? They're not just things that we pull out of the air, and that sometimes interpretations change, and why is that? Why is our interpretations changing? And as professional historians, we know that that's how history works. That's how it works. As new resources are discovered, new archival materials discovered, interpretations change, and perspectives change as well. So it's the 250th is an opportunity to shed light on how that type of work is done, and I'm really hopeful that we're able to do that for our local government historians, but also for folks working in museums. We're putting programs together and exhibits together. And then the rest of the guide is really a resource, and you'll note that Albany County is not listed in here. That's because when this was printed, you hadn't formed your commission, but know that the PDF that lives on our website does have Albany County, and the next time we print, Albany County will be included. But we're new initiatives are coming on board, new commissions are being formed around the state, which is a good thing. So we're constantly adding material to this, and then there's just other material related to resources, and so our commission has a website, State Commission, a 250th website, which we host here. That includes information on what the commission's doing, but we also share information about what other commissions are doing. And so if you have events and news, please send it to me. We'll get them up on the website. We're working with I Love New York right now on having them host the event calendar, because they get a lot more hits than we do. So that's one thing that the commission is going to be discussing at the next meeting, is I Love New York taking on the kind of promotional role that they really should be doing. And I think they're willing to do. It's just, the commission has to ask, type of thing. So that's happening. And yesterday we attended the summit in Saratoga, and that was something that I put together with the New York State Tourism Industry Association, because the tourism industry, as Dave obviously knows, there are they're our mouthpiece for this. They're the ones that are going to be promoting this. They're the ones that are going to be promoting the events, hopefully, that happen in different regions and at the state level. And they're really our opportunity to engage with audiences and bring people here to see these sites. And to me, that's one of the major important realities of the 250th, is that it can, if we look at the bicentennial, for example, it can spur public interest in history at an unprecedented level, right? The bicentennial, if you look, I oversee museum chartering for the state as well, so if you look at when a lot of the historical societies were created in New York State, it was around the bicentennial, either shortly before, during, or shortly after, like a large amount of them. And so, you know, unfortunately, in the last 50 years, we've seen some of the interests at the local level kind of dissipate for a variety of reasons. And I see the 250th as an opportunity to not only provide direct support and resources for these organizations and promotion, but also engage local communities in being interested again and taking part, becoming volunteers, becoming board members, really understanding what their resources are. You mentioned the Normanskill. I mean, I used to live right down the road in Guilderland. We used to go to the park all the time, and it's one of those resources, like many hundreds around the state, that played vital roles in history that I won't say they're forgotten, because they're not. There's people that certainly know, but I think your general audience may not understand, and even your general population may not understand. They see the historic site, or the historic marker, and they say, well, something happened there, and it's, you know, no idea what it is. But when you dive down deep and you realize, yeah, that was a skirmish, but it was a part of a chain of events, right? Important part of a chain of events that led to the most important battle, certainly in the Western Hemisphere, which was the Battle of Saratoga, and arguably a top 10 battle in human history. You know, so these things are all tied together, and I'm really hopeful that, you know, that's one of the legacies of the 250th is that lives beyond the commemorative era, is an interest in local history again, or a renewed interest. Not that there doesn't exist local history interest, but a reinvigorated interest in local history. So that's part of what our vision is for this. The other piece, and I'm sure everybody's interested in, is funding. So we're putting together an appropriation request to the governor's office, and have been speaking with legislators about it. And you know, I don't know what's going to happen, but I do know that there is a lot of conversations happening right now as the budget is being kind of formulated at the agency level. We have strong partners in state parks because of their role in the commission, other state agencies, and we have champions in the legislature. Assemblymember Warner carried the bill in the assembly. She represents Saratoga Battlefield, as everyone here knows. And then Senator Mayer from the Hudson Valley, Westchester, carried it in the Senate. She's also the chair of the Education Committee in the state Senate. So very strong partners. There's also partners from across the state at the legislative level, Buffalo and up and down the Hudson Valley, New York City. Do you want me to talk about the tall ships
Yes,
thing?
please.
Okay, so one of the projects that is in the works is bringing the tall ships back to New York Harbor. And so there's a little overview of that. There's 5 host ports that are hosting the international fleet of tall ships. So these are the tall ships that are owned by countries around the world that they use to train their naval cadets, and they also use them to come to big events like this. And the bicentennial, you may remember, New York City played host to that. Had about 6 million people attend that, which is mind-blowing now. But anyway, they've been planning on bringing the international fleet of tall ships back to these 5 harbors. So it's New Orleans, it's Baltimore, Norfolk, Baltimore, New York, and Boston. And what was announced about a year ago is that New York would host the tall ships on July 4th of 26, so the actual birthday of the country. So massive event, massive amount of planning going on down in the city. The organization that is spearheading that is called Sailforth NY. The person that's at the head of that was a former Coast Guard officer who was instrumental in overseeing the tall ships coming in for the Millennium in 2000.
Awesome.
So this person's name's Chris O'Brien, is direct background in this. They are planning on, again, July 4th of 26, but how is this relevant to Albany? Well, it's New York, number one, but number two is the other piece of that is, and the plan is to take some of the smaller tall ships, so these are still pretty impressive vessels, but they're smaller than the big giant ones, and their masts are short enough to get under bridges, perhaps, hopefully. So the plan is to bring a sub-fleet up the Hudson, stopping in Kingston, and then eventually ending here in Albany. And this would be, they're looking at July 6th by the time they make it up here. And then having some sort of an event here. And it coincides with work that we're doing. And again, this is, all in the planning stages at this point, but this is what they're planning. So we're trying to make it coincide with the official opening of our 250th exhibit here, which we're in the planning stages of, and I only have one of these, but I can send you the PDF of this for the whole commission. But so we're planning a 250th exhibit, a big one. If you remember where the Erie Canal exhibit was with the big windlass, we're going to do it in there. And the reason we need the space is because this ship is coming back. This is we call it the World Trade Center ship. It was found after the tragedy of 9/11. It was found in the fill underneath the World Trade Center, but it's a Revolutionary War British ship. It's from when the British controlled New York City. And so it's been, for the last few, if not several years, it's been being conserved at Texas A&M. They have a big lab there that does conservation, and it's coming back, really it's coming back this fall. And I'd love to offer you all a view of it before it goes on public display, because I think it's vital for us, and you'd love to see it, even though it looks like a wreck. It is a wreck.
We know.
Yeah. So, but anyway, so the idea would be that we would have our major kind of public opening of this exhibit. It'll be probably open before then, but it'll be the major kickoff to coincide with the ships coming here.
Fantastic.
So Chris O'Brien has been making the rounds of anyone and everyone, including, actually what just came out last week officially was an announcement by the U.S. Navy that will also be Fleet Week in New York City. So the Navy's involved, the president will be there, whomever that will be, will be there for Fleet Week. So it's a major, and this is in New York City, but that's a major happening. So they're allowing them access to some naval funding. Because it's about a $20 million project, so just for New York. They're in the stages of fundraising. There's an appropriation request separate from our commission's request, but there's an appropriation request that's being made to the state. The city has already offered many kind of in-kind, because they're doing all the dredging for these ships to be able to come in, and the ports and all of that down there. New Jersey is also involved because not all of them can actually fit on the New York side, so New Jersey has to take some. So it's a massive kind of undertaking, but I'm hopeful because the dollar amount that I was told, the estimate is if they can fundraise $500,000, they can bring the ships up to Albany. So that seems like a reasonable.
How much was it again?
500,000. So that seems reasonable to me, and that would be all. That wouldn't be just Albany. That would be stopping in Kingston, and so because there is a cost, obviously, for these ships to to come and, you know, supply the crews and all of that. So one of the ships that is very much a part of this, which is exciting, it's not necessarily a revolutionary ship, but it is in some way, is the Amistad. So the Amistad was, for the first time, I was shocked. I was at an event last week of August on the date of the actual Amistad event in Montauk, and that was the first time they had been to Montauk, even though they're right across the Sound.
Huh.
They're based in Connecticut, in Mystic. So, but anyway, they were in Yonkers, they were in Montauk, and we had a great event down there, right at the site where the enslaved people got off from the Amistad and came ashore, and then were captured and taken to Connecticut, because Connecticut was still a slave state in 1839, and if they had stayed in New York, of course, we had gradual abolition by 1827, so they would have been freed. But the Navy captured them and took them across. So anyway, the Amistad hopefully will be involved. We're also in early talks with the Seneca Chief being involved. So the Seneca Chief is a replica made by the Buffalo Maritime Museum of the ship that DeWitt Clinton, it was a canal boat that he sailed on down for the Wedding of the Waters, and they're doing their major sail from Buffalo across the Erie Canal and down the Hudson. It's actually it's stored in Waterford right now, which I didn't realize.
Oh, it's there now?
Yeah,
Oh.
I think he said that. But anyway, they're also, so that's 25 is the Erie Canal big thing, but they're also interested in taking part in the Tull ships.
What about the is the Half Moon still in the Netherlands?
Yeah.
It is, yeah.
that
I
coming?
know that Chris has been in touch with them. I don't know
They
if,
like it here, over in the Netherlands.
I don't know if they're able to attend. A lot of it's scheduling and whatnot, and it's tough to get these ships sometimes across the ocean. But so that's happening, and I introduced Chris to Paul Tonko because he wanted to. He's meeting with legislators, congressional legislators up and down the Hudson and in the city, and Mr. Tonko was very interested in this, and suggested that he would support anything that Speaker Jeffries wanted to do as far as an appropriation. So a lot of that is being talked about. I know that
Minority leader.
Oh, right. But so those conversations are happening, and then that's all coming together. So that's kind of our I think it's going to be the nation's signature event, obviously, on the 4th of July. I know Philadelphia's doing stuff, and Washington's going to have fireworks.
And just
but
for a wild card, not related to us, but it's World Cup that weekend.
it
too.
is, yeah.
So-
FIFA, yeah.
So that's gonna be massive.
They're
And
down
the
there.
4th is on
too.
a Saturday, right? In 2020,
It
I think it
is.
is
Yeah.
a Saturday.
Yes,
Yeah.
because they were talking about being here on that Monday.
Well, I think, that's awesome. And, the thing is, even if we were not personally or collectively enamored of it, it's going to be the most defining thing.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I think we should do
Yeah.
whatever we can to
Yeah.
get with it, get behind it.
Be
That's,
involved. in
Be
any way you
involved,
can.
exactly.
Yeah.
That's kind of the way I'm looking at it too.
Host
So
it.
glad somebody else is putting it together, because there's a lot of moving pieces. Just the amount that I'm involved in is kind of mind blowing. But yeah, so that's a major opportunity.
Mhm.
And then as far as the rest of the planning that's going on with the commission, so the legislation that creates our commission created the commission till 2033, so it's the entire
Yeah.
revolutionary era. So there's a lot, you can argue about, commemoration fatigue and all of that, but there's many events, as we all know, tied directly to New York throughout the entire revolution.
It's also true for us. We
Yeah.
deliberately
Same way.
gave ourselves a 7-year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's important. I think one of the complaints, I don't know if it was a complaint, but one of the downsides of the bicentennial itself was that it essentially ended
Yeah.
after 26, and that's how America 250 is set up now. So the National Commission sunsets, I believe, January 1st of 27. So that's that's when we're just getting started, right?
Yep.
We've got the battles of Saratoga, we've got Sullivan Clinton, we've got.
Well, that's our opportunity in an economic development context and tourism context to basically, Philadelphia ran their race, they're done, we'll take it from there,
Right.
We'll mop up for the next 6 years. right?
Yeah, so we're planning on, events surrounding that, but really what the commission is established to do, if you look at the legislation, it's to support what's going on locally, right? So we're not necessarily going to be facilitating events and putting events together. What the commission needs to really be doing is supporting the events that are being planned. So whether it's the tall ships or whether it's local programming, exhibits, whatever it is, it's really established to do that. So, as we move forward, and if and when there's an appropriation made, that's the idea is that the funding would be, the way the legislation is written is that the funding is split up between state parks and SED. State Parks' funding is to be used for their for capital for their historic sites. They have a backlog of capital needs for the state historic sites that have gone back for many years, and they're starting to chip away at that. But this is an opportunity for them to prepare their sites for an influx of visitors, and then the rest of the money comes to SED to be regranted out to local government historians, local commissions, municipalities, schools, whatever it is that are doing 250th programming. So that's the way the legislation is set up, and so that's what we're following as far as a model. So again, we'll see, but one of the ideas that we had for a regrant program would be for implementation for plans that are already in existence, for programming, for if a commission prioritizes a monument or a new park, it could be used for those types of things. It can be used for bringing speakers to events. It can be used for doing a new exhibit or, that kind of stuff. So it's pretty broad as far as the legislation. We're also set up, the commission's also set up to receive funds from private entities. So we have an account with the comptroller that's under the commission's name. So we're working on ideas for, for fundraising beyond, a state appropriation, and whether that's private donation or looking at things like a commemorative license plate through the state or a commemorative. I mean, these are all being, who knows what's going to happen, but these are all being discussed. But one idea would be a commemorative scratch off.
I knew that was coming.
Well, that's what everyone wants, right?
Yeah.
I was talking to Brian
But
Stratton.
I would buy that. Like, I'm who that's marketed to.
I was talking to Brian Stratton about the 200th of the canal, which is next year, and we're doing stuff with them, and they're doing the same. They're asking for the same thing. So it's like, we'll have a canal license plate and a canal scratch off, and then we'll have a 250th one. But the nice thing about the 250th one is it goes for years, right?
Yeah.
So it's not just next year.
Well, if
so.
you'd like some tips on the scratch off, I'd be happy to.
Oh yes, I know nothing about it, so I'm like
Used to be my wheelhouse.
I'm like a babe in the woods with that. I mean, I have done stuff with commemorative license plates in the past in the legislature, and we did some stuff about your tax return, but that's increasingly hard to get new accounts for that. So, but one of the things in this brochure that was handed out yesterday, this was literally hot off the presses, and got it like hours before the commissioner came. Is something that our commissioner Rosa is using as a funding tool, sending to foundations.
The QR code.
Yep, it's a QR code. So the Archives Partnership Trust, which is our OCE's kind of a public benefit corporation, I believe it's technically a 501c3. They're mandated to support the archives and OCE, so they're going to be the ones handling the money as donations come in. So we have a bit of more flexibility there. So yeah, we're moving forward. And what else did I leave out? Yesterday. So yesterday was, to me, hopefully a kickoff event for more events like that around the state, ideally, that bring local planners, local 250th commissions and organizations and historians together with the tourism folks. And again, the tourism folks are the ones that are going to be hopefully very helpful in driving the message and getting the word out, and also partnering, as we saw with some of the presentations yesterday, what's happening in Dutchess County. That's a direct partnership between their 250th Commission and their TPA, I believe. So the tourism entity, and also in Saratoga County, that partnership, as Jack mentioned, has been there from day one. They have their own not-for-profit. They have $350,000 a year in the state or their county budget. So there's a lot of resources being put behind it. Well, we think about that's a great amount of money, and that's fantastic. But Virginia, their 250th Commission has a $20 million a year budget and 17 staff people.
Wow.
Ours has right now $50,000 and 2 staff people, and we don't even, we have other stuff that we're doing. So anyway, our hope is that we get in line and get. We're not going to get $20 million a year, but getting resources so that we can put them out to local organizations that are doing the work.
Is there anything helpful local commissions can do for you, letter of support or anything like that to say?
Yeah, I think I've been asking organizations to consider a letter of support. I can't lobby, and I'm not lobbying, but I think that your voice is important. My old boss, Steve, in the assembly used to call it third-party validators, and that's essential for this. And I think the more that legislators and the governor hears from local organizations about the need for this, the better. And I would welcome any kind of outreach that this commission could do, and other commissions as well.
And even a subset of that too, Nave, if you reached out to all of our, like, Mansion, Schuyler Mansion, Cherry Hill, we could all piggyback off of that and submit letters of support, just from the local entities as well.
Absolutely.
Well, it's great to learn that you're going to have money to disperse, so we'll make it our business to be worthy of your generosity.
Being on the budget committee, don't forget Albany is alphabetically number 1 in the state of New York.
There you go.
Yeah.
Just keep that in mind.
Absolutely.
Stop right there.
In this day of age and of Zoom and so many remote communication going on, which could get worse if we wind up with any new illnesses going around, et cetera, et cetera. Now, there's also constant conflicts. Now, like the public historians meeting is directly opposite Lafayette's here, obviously.
I know, that's why
And I just wonder, throughout this whole period, we should do more taping, so that when Zoom should mean not just what happens currently, but it also should be a way to get the things that you missed at your own convenience.
Yeah, and that's a great point, and that's one of the things that we're certainly going to do with the state commission. And in fact, you can watch I know you were there, but you can watch the last meeting on our website. But that is a great point. I think that.
Is it on now that went on yesterday in Saratoga?
Well, they didn't record that.
No, Saratoga didn't get recorded.
I wish it had, in fact, I was a little. I wasn't sure why
That's
they
an
didn't.
example.
Something tells me we didn't know how good it was, to be honest. Like, I think we went in.
There was a lot of I hope we get 50 people, and we ended up with 100.
Yeah.
Oh, it
It's
was
like-
phenomenal. It was
Yeah.
such a great meeting.
Yeah, so I think people were not that, we want to not go open mind, but then
Yeah.
how valuable it was.
But I agree. I think it should have been recorded, and that's one of the things we're trying with the State History Conference too, is making sure that we record at least the events in the Huxley Theater.
If it's a bomb, you don't have to play
You
it.
don't have to release it, right?
Yeah. But if you don't have the option,
Yeah.
Devin, just to, and thank you very much.
Sure.
That
That's great.
was
Thank
so-
you.
that was helpful. And so- But just to close the loop specifically on the tall ships, I think we should, if you, in an unofficial capacity, if you can
Sure.
let Mr. O'Brien know that we're, you know, we're ready, willing, and able to host, to do our part, whatever. We'll be fully behind it. If we want a official resolution of that, we can make a motion. Just a suggestion, if it's still, if the timing or schedule, not the schedule, but the places are still fluid, I would suggest they figure out some way to involve the east side of the Hudson, for two reasons. One, you mentioned Congressman Tonko and perhaps Speaker Jeffries, but Congressman Molinaro.
Yep.
And of course, he was the mayor of Tivoli, so.
Yeah.
But also, there's just a lot more
The boy-
private wealth on
Yeah.
the east side of the Hudson.
Right.
So, you know, and I've got a couple people in mind, actually, that might be
Yeah.
supportive.
Well,
Yeah.
that's fabulous, and I also know, you know, I mentioned Congressman Tonko, but we've also had great conversations with Congresswoman Stefanik, who obviously represents Saratoga County,
Yep.
part of it. But one of the initiatives that she's suggested and that we're kind of pursuing as a commission is doing a New York State Revolutionary Trail. So it would be a statewide, go across the state, probably from New York City up and then over. And the model is what they're doing right now in South Carolina, which is, and it's being spearheaded by the American Battlefield Trust, which was mentioned yesterday. And so they, so we've been in conversations with them about how to do something like that in New York, and really as an opportunity to tie these sites together and to have some physical signage as well, but also an app and a website that directs travelers how to get from, so yeah, that's a wonderful point of making sure that we're keeping, you know, everyone involved. And I know Chris is reaching out to all the elected officials up and down the
Right.
Hudson.
Right.
I'm not sure if he's spoken to Mr. Molinaro, but I know he was doing outreach.
The concept of a trail actually is something that we brought up, I think, at our very first meeting. You know, something, just in Albany County, linking the Schuyler, Cherry Hill, Battle of Normanskill, the new Switskill Park, which the county now owns, where the massacre was. So that's definitely on our.
Yeah, and I think
Okay.
those type of kind of local trail initiatives just make sense to just be brought into the statewide one,
Yeah.
from a promotional aspect, but even from a physical aspect, if there can be, we're not very far down the road with them. We've had a few meetings with the trust, Battlefield Trust. They're also doing other things around the state, which are cool, like investing in Newtown Battlefield out in near Elmira, which was the only actual battle of the Sullivan-Clinton campaign. It's a state site, but it's not technically on the actual ground of the battle. The state owns part of it where the battle didn't take place, essentially. So there's conversations about interpreting it, but also acquiring more of the actual battlefield itself. So the trust is very active, and I know they actually granted some of the money that has come to Saratoga has been Battlefield Trust. They paid for the strategic plan. So I don't know if this commission is tasked with doing a strategic plan or not, but that might be an avenue of not that you should do it if you don't have to.
While we're at it, maybe we could get the state parks to get the Battle of Bennington monument moved to where the battle
Yeah.
actually took place in New York State.
Steal it. So
Steal it.
Shipping it in the dead of night.
I do a lot of meetings with our neighboring states and regional states. We talk about 250th ways to collaborate, Knox Trail being one of them. But other meetings we've had regularly with Vermont and with Massachusetts, Connecticut, Pennsylvania, New Jersey. And I always preface my conversation with Vermont people, because they're based in Bennington, the representative
Yeah.
is like
Okay.
at the Bennington Museum. And I always let them know that the Battle of Bennington did not happen in
That's
Bennington.
It happened in Albany County. Maeve, Sandy, did you have any particular takeaways from yesterday's
I think
conference?
you made a motion.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Tall ships.
I would like to make a motion that we transmit to the organizers of the Tall Ship commemoration our full cooperation, support, willingness to host or otherwise do whatever we can to help facilitate the plan and hopefully the extension of the Tall Ships exercise to up the Hudson to Albany.
I so moved.
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time, Devin, that was
Oh, that
really
was
great.
That
awesome.
was very good.
Thank you.
Did you have any specific takeaways from yesterday that you wanted to share?
So even though we're in the beginning stages, narratively we're on the right track. So it was seen like everybody doing with all their big flashy everything, and augmented reality is kind of what a lot of people are doing. So Saratoga has like a walking tour where you can scan a QR code and an actor stands, so it looks like they're standing in front of you talking to you. Patrick and I couldn't quite get this to work today, but Dutchess County is doing a tour, or partnering with local restaurants and taverns and bars, where you can go and scan a QR code, and you get a story. They have a George Washington actor you can put your beer next to him, but each location has a different George Washington with a different story, so they call it gamify, like, so it incentivizes you to go.
I thought you were gonna say you get a free beer.
Yeah.
There might be prizes. I don't know if they had a prize.
And they were talking about it. I don't know.
Yeah, but what it, even with all of that, I kept going away with it of like, oh, but what we came with was like, it's about people. State Parks is putting kiosks into different state sites, but it's about individual stories. So my takeaway from coming, which I was like, okay, we're on the right track, was how much it was about, okay, yes, there's the battles and there's that, but how much of these programs were about individual people and finding ways to get the public to interact with an individual story, whether that was for, with alternate reality or a kiosk or something. It was very people focused, which I thought was kind of cool. So that made me feel good that we were on the right track there.
Good.
Yeah, and I think one of the important things was looking at all of the different county, they are all focusing on one specific thing to try to tackle. So I think our goal of the Normanskill battle is a very good way to go. I think that's, we are definitely on the right track.
Yeah.
But it's amazing, as Maeve said, on the AR and some of the things that these counties have already achieved.
Mm-hmm.
But definitely it was thank you for letting me go, for Albany County.
What's the date of the Normanskill battle?
August 13th, 1777.
Good.
No, 17.
A couple of things struck me. One is if and when we ever do produce any type of video that we not use piped fife music.
That's what everyone's doing.
It's like, just
Fife,
canned
fife.
fife music. It was just like, oh, and I love this. I love the history, but as soon as I hear that fife, I'm like zoned out. But the other thing is structurally for the commission. That some of the others, and again Saratoga, I think they were set up. They had a not-for-profit corollary group, like a Friends type group. I think we're provided for that with the relationship with the Visitors Bureau. But we might just want to check whether our relationship that we set up is as strong and as potentially worthwhile or useful to us as the way these other counties have set up. Also, structurally speaking, some of the others, and as you described the way the state commission is set up, are sort of more institutionally structured with established sort of stakeholders. We are structured more as sort of a citizen commission, citizen who represent or have an interest in type thing. And that may prove to be somewhat of a weakness when we start going and asking for resources and things like that we don't have as much as structural presence. So I'm wondering whether, perhaps considering setting up some sort of a advisory council or some supplemental that would involve the actual, commissioner of county parks or that had more sort of the institutional structure. Now, I don't want to, I like the way that, the decision-making is left to us, but I do think that we might want to give some thought to a structure like that. And then the other sort of takeaway, programmatically, they talked about, I think Saratoga County talked about, piggybacking off of existing entities, venues, events, which I think is just is very smart. But I got thinking about that in our context, and certainly that's relevant to us too, piggybacking off of existing cultural and historical associations. But also I think we have a unique opportunity, given that we are the capital city, right? And we were the destination of a lot of this back in time, of sort of recentering and sort of piggybacking off of what Saratoga is doing, what Oriskany may be doing, right? And inserting ourselves into the middle of that and sort of capturing it for our benefit, so to speak, right? Did you follow me on that?
Yeah, and so Schenectady, as of like the ink wasn't even dry yet for their commission. The night before, and Mike Leonard, right? Is that from our Lafayette or Chris Leonard?
Yeah,
Chris
he's the historian.
So I said to him, I said, we should connect. He said, yeah, this should be regional. And I also thought, as we're bringing Devon in, that bringing in Saratoga, but that would be almost another initiative of some of these other commissions we should meet. And
Yes.
I say this with all due respect to Devon's busy schedule, but would it be valuable to this commission if Devon could become somewhat of our point person and maybe every couple of months meet with us at our commission meetings? Schedule.
Sure, I think it makes a lot of sense.
We can ask.
I'm asking.
The advantage of travel.
That
for
I
you.
think ties into what we're trying to do, and you kind of become
I don't.
spoke to our.
I don't think I can serve on the commission, but I can serve as a ex officio.
Special guest.
That would be awesome.
yeah,
Yes.
special
That would be
guests.
awesome.
But I do think that your idea of a regional approach is valuable. One of the, and I didn't bring their, they gave me a rack card yesterday, but Fort Ticonderoga has assembled a thing called, they're calling it the Northern Department, as after the Northern Department of Schuyler. And, but what they're doing is looking at all of the organizations that are working on 250, commissions, also other states, Vermont, Massachusetts I think is involved, and Canada. And they're facilitating a kind of a regional approach out of Fort Ticonderoga. I get why they kind of stop with, they go as far south as Saratoga basically, but I think it's a valuable approach because, again, should we receive an appropriation from the state, I think a regional approach makes a lot of sense. Ways to, amplify each other, but also to, as we know, the boundaries have changed, the borders have changed. Events that took place in what is now a certain county was at one time a different county, Saratoga, for example. So there's a lot of opportunity, I think, for a regional approach. And I know that's what the Hudson Valley is looking to do too, specifically Dutchess County, Orange County, and Westchester. So I just want to concur that I think, and if facilitating a meeting of the commissions around here is something that I can help do, we can host it, or if we
I think
want to
that
do
would
it
be
on
great.
Zoom. But I'm thinking Warren County, Washington County, Saratoga, Albany, Schenectady now.
Schoharie, if they have one.
Does it get messy? So,
Rensselaer County has one now.
oh, they
Oh,
do?
they do?
Ah.
I'm pretty sure, yeah. I should know, I live in that.
The Discover Albany, we help chair we call it the CAP Saratoga Regional Tourism, and there's some I Love New York there to build a website, and it's something that's been ongoing. Is it too messy to bring in those tourism promotion agencies with a commission meeting, or just meet with the commissions first and then? But it's just we already have an arm of the marketing people, but I don't have the arm necessarily of all the commissions.
I would defer to you, I think eventually that conversation is vital, but maybe initially you
Yeah,
want to
Just
start
the
see
commissions, yep.
see who's, because as you know, you're kind of early in the process. Schenectady is very early. I think Washington County is pretty early in everything. Warren County's been up and running for a little while. So I think there's going to be varying levels of where people are, and maybe just facilitating a meeting of the region first.
Okay.
And I think the power of that regional approach is borne out by another takeaway from yesterday, when they talked about, when the Saratoga County Administrator talked about the relative attendance at various parks across the country. And this is relevant not just to the business of commemorating, but, you know, ongoing, and an ongoing impact of all these things. It struck me that the ones that were the highest attended nationally were the ones that were more thematic and multi-place. State Park, Minuteman Park, Colonial down in Virginia, by a multiple of 2 and 3 to 1.
Yeah.
Right? As opposed to the, you know, Cowpen specifically, Saratoga specifically,
Yeah.
right? So, you know, thematically, if we were able to insert ourselves into a, you know, a broader, whether it's Northern Department or, I keep going back to Destination Albany, but that's probably a little parochial, right? And, you know, on a long-term basis, you know, if we can, you know, working with Saratoga and say, listen, if we work together on this, we can, you know, double your attendance at your battlefield, but, you know, have people start and have a relevance to their visit that takes place here in Albany County.
Sure.
Right? I mean,
I
the
think
fact of the matter is, whatever person they're targeting, whatever heritage tourist they're targeting anywhere in the United States, to go to Saratoga is gonna start their visit in Albany County,
Yep.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So we might as well insert ourselves into that discussion.
Sure, I think it makes, you know, I think one of the things that I've learned over the years about heritage tourism is that all this stuff they said yesterday, they stay longer, they spend more money, but they're also usually more willing to go to different sites. You know, not always, of course, travel is, you know, whether or not they've rented a car and all of that, but they do tend to be more regionally based, and that's why the Ticonderoga initiative has included the other states, because they're part of the history, but they're also, many travelers don't care. I mean, you know way more about traveling than I do, but many travelers don't care about borders, right? They're gonna go to Bennington, and they're gonna.
Yeah.
Well, it's smart for Ticonderoga too, because a lot more people are thinking, oh, it's October, let's go to Vermont.
Yes.
Than they are thinking, oh, it's October, let's go to Essex County, New York,
Right,
right? So it's
Yeah.
smart of Ticonderoga to worm their way into
Yeah.
the
Definitely.
Vermont tourists.
definitely, and it's, so there's a lot of opportunity, I think, for that type of model, and I think, yeah, as you're thinking about Saratoga and the battle, you know, and the people that hopefully will be wanting to go there and increase the visitation there, I mean, there's no reason that they shouldn't come to sites in Albany as well.
Absolutely.
You know, and I think.
Because
there's-
thematically, they're all
They're all tied.
Well, imagine someone coming from wherever, and their first stop is the Battle of Normanville, and they have lunch in Gilderland.
Or
Sure.
Schuyler
Or
Mansion. I mean,
Schuyler Mansion, then they go up to Saratoga, and then, you
Right.
know, they do and then it also makes sense in terms of the timing and stuff.
Yeah.
I met a gentleman at the event yesterday from, his publication is called, I think, American Magazine, and I thought it was like some sort of history thing, and so I was talking to him, well, he approached me, but we were talking, and he told me it's actually a travel magazine for German citizens. It's a German, and which made sense as he had an accent, but it's a German magazine for travelers to the United States, and they're pushing this big time, because the German people love history, and they love to, you know, engage with, he was saying indigenous history is very interesting to them, and so I think something like that is an opportunity, like if you're gonna get travelers from abroad, and they're gonna come, even if they're gonna come to visit eventually Saratoga, they're gonna come here first, right? And they're gonna fly into here, and they're gonna,
Well, if we do our work correctly and follow the right strong themes, I mean, imagine someday turning on PBS and having them broadcast the Viking tour, you know, from
Right.
up the Hudson to Saratoga or
Yeah,
down to West
American-
Point.
We get American Cruise Lines in October. so-
I've seen, yeah.
Yeah.
I remember at the Manny office, they used to dock right behind
Yep.
us in Troy.
Good, well, good stuff.
Great.
I've hijacked your chairmanship, so you want to
No,
go
that's
back to the-
perfectly fine. I mean, I think we're just on to just being mindful of the time.
Yeah.
We're running over our usual attendance at the September 17th Lafayette dinner. So-
Right. I just need to know, we obviously voted to have a table of 8.
Yep.
I need to know the 8 people that will be taking that table.
I'd like one.
I've got one, but I had my own ticket for my
Jack's got one.
wife,
So
so I'll go.
You wanna go?
So don't count that one.
But that's next Tuesday?
On the 17th, yes.
Yeah.
6 o'clock cocktails at the Century House.
Okay.
So
I think-
Jeff, Maeve,
Yeah, we bought a number of tickets.
Can you bring your wife?
And if we find out that somebody can't be there, we should make sure that those tickets are used.
Yeah,
oh,
we have to- yeah,
absolutely.
we have to
Oh,
fill the
yeah.
table.
And that's what I really, yeah, I don't have to know immediately.
Okay.
But I think the commission needs to decide who would they like to
Brian, are you
invite
able, or-
to be.
I'm not able to.
Okay.
I have a meeting that evening, unfortunately.
Do we want, can you reach out to Paul
6 o'clock.
and just see if he has an interest?
Okay.
If not, then I would suggest you extend the invitation to your wives?
Yes,
Okay.
oh,
Paul
absolutely.
as in Taco,
No.
No,
It's on his card door.
Stuart.
because he was originally.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, Paul Stewart.
Patrick, did you say you can come?
Probably. Gotcha.
I'm sorry, you were saying extending invitations?
If we still have seats to fill, then you should bring your wife.
Bring him. So I have Mark, I have Jeff, I have Maeve, I have Paul Stewart, and I have Patrick. So there's 3
I
seats.
know Jennifer Dorsey has her own table.
She has her own table,
Okay.
yes, she does.
Now, thinking are there any potential partners, constituents, whatever, that we would like to butter up by offering free dinner?
That's the question to you, yes.
Well, let's all think about that,
Okay.
and if you have any ideas along those lines, maybe let Patrick know.
Yeah,
But we'll commit to filling the table one way or the other.
yeah, yeah. And Patrick, I guess if you could just on Monday at some point, let me know.
Yeah, can you generate like a written bill or invoice or something?
Sure.
Thank you.
Send it to you
Yes.
for the table.
Yeah, the county has a very strict paperwork situation. So.
And it should be to the town, Albany County.
Yes.
Yep.
I can do that.
Okay.
And then last, you have the Discover Albany Visitor Center. The worst kept secret in Albany is now hit the TU. We have outgrown our space at Quackenbush Square. So a lease has not been signed. I want to strict, a lease has not been signed. But the Redburn Development owns the former Union Station building, Kiernan Plaza. And they have partnered with, they're in talks with CDTA to create the hub, which would be CDTA, like your jumping off point as a visitor, where you can get your bus tickets, you can get your bike, you can get all of these different programming happening at Union Station. The downtown bid is one of the people who will be moving their offices in there, and we are in talks with Redburn right now and negotiating whatnot to potentially move our offices and a visitor center there. And we have received funding, ARPA funding from the county to upfit that visitor center, to make it something so when people come, it does feel like a welcome center, and that's what the Times News is calling it, that this is a welcome center. It's, the space that we'd be looking at is like 750 square feet, so it's small. When pitching the ARPA and when all this vision came in and I found out about CDTA, there was a theme that I pitched of, transportation, because I did think like we shouldn't just be a brochure rack. It should be like you come, you get that taste of Albany County history, and then you're out. But if we're gonna be in an old train station with all this transportation, something potentially transportation themed, none of this, we've got the funding, but of course, hearing from our county stakeholders and community is really important. So all of this just happened as of Monday. So Monday or Tuesday, no, yesterday actually. I think I got the text yesterday that, so more to come on that. Again, it's not a big space, but it's all in development at the moment, so.
It seems like if there is a need for programming or content, it would seem like a great opportunity for us to try to fill it.
Yeah, it's, and there is, so it's in the old SEFQ, there are some electronic kiosks I'm a little afraid of, because what do you do when they break? But, we probably do need to do a lot more virtual in that small space to be nimble, to be able to highlight, here's our Rev War, this is everything that's going on, and so yes, definitely, we want to work closely with the county, especially with this ARPA funding, to make sure that this is.
Some nice fife music in the background.
Yeah, you see my poor frontline staff like, but right now, but that was sort of the pitch right now with everything happening with CDTA. Again, I don't know, it hit the paper, but themes of transportation, crossroads, right, things like that. There's, I think there's definitely opportunities there.
Great. Well, keep us
Yeah,
posted.
I will.
And again, not to speak for everybody, but I hopefully reflect the will of the group that it would be something we'd be interested in,
Sure.
Yeah,
you know,
that would be great.
if not curating, at least contributing to.
That'd be great, yeah.
Okay.
All right, is there any other business?
No, just, I think I mentioned it last time, but the political and historical memorabilia show, I mentioned it only, it doesn't sound like we have materials or any
Not yet.
flyer stickers yet. So I guess we wouldn't in the next 3 weeks, but on the off chance that we do, I'm happy to, because I'll have a couple tables there, I'm happy to, do a little, not display, but
Yeah.
have some stuff out. The majority of attendees are gonna be Albany County folks and obviously surrounding capital region, so.
When we're in time, sorry, I didn't know.
That is Saturday, October 5th, at the Albany Airport Inn on Wolf Road. Starts at 9, I think it's officially 9 to 3. Usually more active on the front half of 9 to 3 than the back half of 9 to 3.
This is the one that used to be on, it used to be in
A number of years ago, it was on Western Ave.
yeah,
the-
and before that, it was the one on Exchange Street or.
Everett Road, Exchange Street.
Yeah, yep.
Everett Road, yeah.
Yeah, so after Everett Road, we moved to Wolf Road. We've been there for a couple of years and now just at a different hotel on Wolf Road.
Okay.
I'll make sure, I will rate Katie some of that wish list of pricing, because I think these tabling opportunities are gonna start ramping up, probably starting in the spring. I know Albany gets a little quiet in the winter, but, but I'll start to get that wish list together, so that when these opportunities come up, we can who can staff it, and we'll bring out the kit.
Give us a 10
Great.
in that list.
To give a 10, yes, I'm gonna put a 10, yes. It might be a pop-up.
So our next meeting is at your place, right?
At the Benford Mansion.
And then we're locked in also, got a commitment on the November meeting at the Normanville Historic House on Knott Road in Guilderland.
What's the date of the next meeting?
I have October 8th in my phone. Does that sound right?
Where's the one in Gilroy?
At the historic Knott Mansion, the Normanville Mansion, it's,
Never seen it.
it was the home of Lieutenant Governor John Taylor,
Yes.
who was also the Commissary General of the Northern Department.
Yeah.
And that one's November 12th.
That sounds right.
Okay.
Yes.
That's why it should be included in the northern department.
That's
There's
definitely,
There's your reasoning.
definitely. How do we do that? How would we,
I can put you in touch with the Ticonderoga folks.
that would be great.
Stuart, blanking on his last name right now, but he was there yesterday. Yeah, they facilitated a couple in-person meetings with everybody at the fort.
Okay.
I think we did one last June. But I can put you in touch with them.
That would be much appreciated. Just, and we always gotta share our nerdy moments, but we've talked about this before, but Lieutenant Governor John Taylor, Albany resident,
Yeah.
state senator, judge, merchant, his farm became the Burgoyne's headquarters in Stillwater, his first farm. He then bought Normanville in early 1800s. He served, he was the governor because Governor Tompkins resigned, but he never took the title governor, even though he always referred to himself as lieutenant governor. He served for 6 months as governor, and in that 6 months, he signed the bill creating the Erie Canal and the final bill to abolish slavery in New York. So not a bad record for 6 months in office.
I'll get that meeting date out to you, I don't have it in front of me.
And his family, his daughter married into the Knott family from Schenectady, and then that was the Knott homestead right up until the 1960s.
Okay. Now I know.
That's all I have.
So what do we make a
So
Make a
motion?
let's
motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.